Imagine, if you will, Christopher Columbus.
Nice! I have a holiday? Well, caramba! I should.
Obviously, that's not really Columbus. This is a cartoon Columbus. He's got electric blue eyes and a big toothy grin. He's a character in a 13-minute video called Leo and Layla Meet Christopher Columbus. John Knefel of Media Matters recently watched it for work.
So he starts off telling the kids this sort of justification for Columbus's treatment of the indigenous people.
Cannibals? Like they
Eat people. See.
Whoa.
Right? Hey, all the things that are bad in the world I come from, jealousy, lying, murder, war, it all exists in the land I just found too. But in Europe, we draw the line at things like eating people and human sacrifice.
And one of the lines that this fictional Columbus character says is that slavery existed everywhere. It's clearly designed to be exculpatory towards the history of slavery in the United States and Europe more broadly.
Slavery is as old as time and has taken place in every corner of the world, even amongst the people I just left. Being taken as a slave is better than being killed, no? I don't see the problem.
Well, in our
Modern scholarship, including for elementary school kids, says that this is not the full story, that there's a much more complicated and rich history here. And the PragerU kids' response to that is, no, there's not.
You won't find these cartoons on Netflix or Disney Plus. They were made by PragerU Kids, a subsidiary of a conservative advocacy group called PragerU. Despite the name, it's unaccredited. That means not a university. Prager has produced hundreds of what it calls edutainment videos. That's like a cross between education and entertainment, only these are for kids. One features Booker T. Washington comforting white children.
Future generations are never responsible for the sins of the past.
Okay, I'll keep doing my best to treat everyone well and won't feel guilty about historical stuff.
Good.
One tackles the evils of Canada's universal health care.
They've been convinced that it's better that way. But is that really the case?
One even compares denying climate change to fighting the Nazis.
Through her family's stories, Anya is realizing that fighting oppression is risky and that it always takes courage.
That one really bothered John.
This is obviously completely ideologically motivated right-wing propaganda to tell kids that if you embrace climate denialism and your peers or your instructors tell you, hey, that's not really scientifically accurate, that you are somehow engaged in this proud tradition of fighting back against Nazism and fascism and totalitarian thinking. And that's just so obviously preposterous that when we watched it, we were really kind of shocked at how blatant it was.
PragerU has been around since 2009, but they're going mainstream. Recently, its materials were approved for use in Florida public schools. And it's not just the videos. They're preparing actual 50-minute lesson plans. And if you didn't pay attention to the actual content, they might seem pretty innocuous, right?
Yeah, and PragerU refers to this curriculum as, quote, turnkey, which is to say that they create it for teachers to just sort of plug and play and to not necessarily supplement it with other materials. It's designed to kind of go down smooth and to mask the ideological project that PragerU is actually pursuing.
Today on the show, the rise of PragerU and the fight to rewrite history. I'm Mary C. Curtis, in for Mary Harris. You're listening to What Next? Stick around.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Hey, listeners, whether you love true crime or comedies, celebrity interviews, news, or even motivational speakers, you call the shots on what's in your podcast queue, right? And guess what? Now you can call the shots on your auto insurance, too. Enter the Name Your Price tool from Progressive. The Name Your Price tool puts you in charge of your auto insurance by working just the way it sounds. You tell Progressive how much you want to pay for car insurance, then they'll show you a variety of coverages that fit within your budget, giving you options. Now that's something you'll want to press play on. It's easy to start a quote, and you'll be able to choose the best option for you, fast. It's just one of the many ways you can save with Progressive Insurance. Quote today at Progressive.com to try the Name Your Price tool for yourself and join the over 29 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Ah, the Bahamas. What if you could hang out with celebrities, live in a penthouse above the crystal clear ocean with all your best friends, and have it be 100% paid for? FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried made that dream a reality, but U.S. prosecutors say he was hiding a dark secret. Barely 30, the young crypto billionaire became a powerful financial figure. But in just 1 month, his exchange would collapse, and SBF would find himself in handcuffs. It's one of the most dramatic falls from grace and represents one of the most spectacular failures of corporate control in American history. Hear exclusive tape of Sam and his former girlfriend and business partner, Caroline Ellison, who later admitted something had gone very wrong inside their operation. From Bloomberg and Wondery comes Spellcaster, a new 6-part docuseries about the meteoric rise and fall of FTX and its founder, Sam Bankman-Fried. Follow Spellcaster wherever you get your podcasts. Hey, Prime members, you can listen to episodes ad-free on Amazon Music. Download the Amazon Music app today.
To understand what PragerU is doing, it's important to understand where it came from. The organization was launched and named after Dennis Prager, a conservative writer and media personality. His show, The Dennis Prager Show, has been a mainstay on conservative talk radio for decades. In 2009, Prager decided to branch out into education when he founded PragerU. From the beginning, the U was aspirational.
It's not a university at all, and they acknowledge that on their website. It's not accredited. It's not associated with any institutions that are accredited. It's a conservative nonprofit entertainment organization. The initial plan with his longtime radio producer was to make an actual physical building, an actual school or school-like facility. But they realized pretty early on that that was going to be prohibitively expensive. There were going to be all sorts of hoops to jump through, like hiring faculty, and that was maybe even going to potentially limit their reach. So in 2011, this is right at the kind of height of the digital media boom, Prager and his associates realize, what's the point of making a physical building when you can just make 5-minute videos? And so they start releasing these 5-minute videos that target what they would say from their perspective are excessive woke ideology on college campuses or PC culture.
Congratulations, graduates. Your days of indoctrination and wokeism are behind you. Your worries about being graded down because you wouldn't say America is systemically racist? Over. Your fears that you'd be...
So do we know just what kind of reach the PragerU videos have had? How many people have viewed them?
One of the things that PragerU was very skilled at early on was writing YouTube algorithms for views. And so they have had a very, very large response on YouTube and Facebook. By 2019, PragerU had 2.45 billion views across YouTube and Facebook. That number is certainly larger now. What's interesting is that PragerU, like many in the conservative media realm, claim that they've been censored by YouTube and Facebook, but the institution has racked up billions and billions of views across social media.
PragerU is a nonprofit, and since the beginning, it has relied on donations. They receive some smaller scale contributions, but a sizable chunk of their funding comes from deep-pocketed conservative donors.
Their initial funding comes from Dan and Ferris Wilks, who are brothers who became multi-billionaires in hydrofracking. That helps to explain partially why so much of PragerU's curriculum embraces climate denialism, is because their early major funders were fracking industrialists. PragerU also got a massive early donation from the Bradley Foundation, which is a very prominent right-wing charity. And over the course of the 2000s, PragerU brings on all of these really prominent conservative talking heads, people like Ben Shapiro.
Corporations spend millions on useless diversity compliance officers.
People like Candace Owens.
I was discussing the tendency in Black America for us to uplift criminals, to pretend that they are heroes and martyrs when they die at the hand of white individuals.
They bring in Tucker Carlson, who cuts an anti-immigrant video for them.
Cesar Chavez hated illegal immigration.
Yeah, I've seen some of those, and it wasn't for younger kids. It was more aimed at college-age students and young adults, right?
Exactly. The target of those were sort of younger millennials, college-age students, high school students who PragerU thought maybe were rebelling against liberal parents or liberal instructors or something like that. And throughout the 2010s, PragerU is trying to get into public schools. They're having some success. The American Prospect reported in 2018 that some instructors had played PragerU videos for students, but that those teachers had been criticized by their students and sometimes faced sanctions. And so what PragerU is trying to do over the course of this decade is figure out a way to get into classrooms, not only at the college and high school level, but then increasingly at the elementary school level as well.
That's where PragerU Kids comes in. Prager began releasing videos, often cartoons, tailored for a younger audience.
Some long-held Hindu traditions, however, became controversial when the British Empire ruled India. This Western influence helped transform the country in many positive ways.
On their website, PragerU describes the series as a way to combat the, quote, woke agendas infiltrating classrooms, culture, and social media.
There's, of course, this huge right-wing reaction to COVID safety precautions. There's a sustained right-wing attack on teachers' unions. And in 2021, PragerU launches PragerU Kids. And it's because they feel like the moment is right. There's this sort of burgeoning, what's referred to euphemistically as the parents' rights movement. And PragerU emerges kind of alongside other extremist groups like Moms for Liberty.
What exactly was the goal of this content when it was created? Do we know where Dennis Prager intended for these videos to be shown and what purpose they were designed for? Was he waiting for this moment?
Well, there's a great quote from Dennis Prager himself. Just last month, he was at a conference that Moms for Liberty held. And at this conference in Philadelphia, he said that it's a, quote, fair statement to say that PragerU indoctrinates children.
All I heard was, well, because you indoctrinate kids. And which is true. We bring doctrines to children. That's a very fair statement. I said, but what is the bad of our indoctrination?
They've always tried to talk out of both sides of their mouth at PragerU, where on the one hand, they say this is kind of non-ideological programming. This is pro-America, trying to downplay the ideological project. But then when Dennis Prager himself, and especially with the launch of PragerU Kids, he and his executives have been explicitly clear that this is meant to be shown in classrooms. And they want to have protection from Florida and from the Florida Department of Education that this is acceptable, so that even if parents do push back, then PragerU can say that we have the entire DeSantis apparatus behind us.
After the break, now that PragerU is in Florida schools, what comes next?
This episode is brought to you by Google. Cyber attacks on critical infrastructure threaten essential services. That's why public institutions like schools, hospitals, and government agencies across the country are partnering with Google to keep their data safe and secure. Because when organizations run on Google Cloud, they're defended by the same AI-powered security that protects all of Google. Explore how Google is keeping more Americans safe online. Visit safety.google/cybersecurity today.
Between the kids being home and hosting, everything in our house gets used up in summer. With Instacart, I can save money by stocking up on all my favorite summer brands. I save time by getting everything delivered in as fast as an hour. And I save myself a sink full of dirty dishes by stocking up on paper plates for the annual summer cookout. Save more on summer essentials. Spend more time enjoying summer. Add summer to cart. Download the app to get free delivery on your first 3 orders. Offer valid for a limited time. Minimum $10 per order. Additional terms apply.
Last month, the Prager CEO posted a video announcing that PragerU Kids was officially a vendor for Florida public schools.
Friends, I'm ecstatic to make this groundbreaking announcement. PragerU is now making it into schools. We have seen that our schools have been hijacked by the left.
She touted how easy it would be for teachers to adopt the curriculum.
This means that if you are a teacher in Florida, you cannot be fired for using PragerU content. You can also rely on our resources in your classrooms. And we're just getting started. Additional states are...
At the time, not many people knew that this decision had been in the works. So I asked John what we know about how exactly this partnership came together.
The behind the scenes is a little bit opaque, but what we do have comes mostly from a recent Miami Herald report on the back and forth. The CEO of PragerU said the state did not approach us. She says, quote, "I would say we got to know each other through mutual friends," end quote. So exactly what that meeting of the minds looked like is unclear, but from that same Miami Herald reporting, we know that Ron and Casey DeSantis apparently show their kids PragerU materials. And we know that the Florida Education Commissioner, Manny Diaz, and the K-12 Chancellor, Paul Burns, are both very, very close DeSantis acolytes. And I think that the obvious play here from PragerU is to use this approval to confer a degree of legitimacy on PragerU that it doesn't deserve.
It's really concerning how young of an audience these videos could reach. So I imagine parents in Florida might be worried about their kindergartners watching videos that present warped views of slavery and race. And these kids are really kind of young to understand and scrutinize what they're being shown.
Well, the goal of targeting kindergartners, first graders, second graders is to get these kids early and to define these issues for them, or at the very least to create enough confusion where they might just sort of internalize this phrase, well, slavery has always been everywhere. And internalizing, a complete distortion and manipulation of history like that at a young age is incredibly difficult to dislodge later on.
And as shocking as some of these videos are, isn't the fact that they're being allowed in Florida not really a surprise? It's pretty on brand for Governor Ron DeSantis and how he's waged this battle with Florida schools. The revised curriculum standards we see that enslaved people were taught skills that benefited them later on. The rejection of the AP African American Studies class as lacking educational value. How does PragerU fit into the bigger picture of what's going on in Florida right now?
It's absolutely one arrow in the quiver that you just laid out. And what's so important to understand is that it doesn't end just with K through 12, but we've also seen DeSantis initiate this hostile takeover of New College of Florida, which was really this bastion of liberal arts, education, tolerance. And DeSantis earlier this year announced that he was going to appoint several new members to the board of trustees of New College, including Christopher Rufo, who listeners may remember as a notorious anti-civil rights activist who's responsible for creating the false panic around so-called critical race theory being taught in schools. And so DeSantis putting Chris Rufo in at the board of trustees at New College has completely changed the character of the school. There's new administration now. You have faculty leaving in droves. And that is an extension of the exact same kind of attacks that we're seeing at the K through 12 level. And PragerU Kids is one very clear and very alarming aspect of that trend.
I want to tag on something you just said, because he says he wants parental rights and he wants to stop indoctrination. But these videos seem like pretty clear indoctrination. You've said that Prager has admitted as much. And if it's parental rights, there obviously are some parents who don't like it. So what does that say?
You're absolutely right that parental rights has always been a code word, a kind of dog whistle for certain parents have parental rights and other parents have zero rights. And what we know from the way that this is playing out is that if you are a Black parent, if you are a trans parent, if you are the parent of a trans child, then you don't have rights. Your parental rights don't matter. And that if you are a white suburban upper middle class parent who doesn't want their kid to be taught about slavery and Jim Crow and the ways that the past continues to order the present, that if you are that parent, you have all the rights in the world.
Yeah, indoctrination is in the eye of the beholder.
Exactly.
Now that PragerU has made it into Florida public schools, where are they heading next?
We don't know what's next for them yet. You could certainly imagine a host of potential states that might be friendly ground for them. You could certainly imagine Greg Abbott in Texas being a kind of soft target for them, potentially someone like Glenn Youngkin in Virginia, whose gubernatorial run in 2021 really kind of encapsulated a lot of this parental rights stuff that we've been talking about. And unfortunately, these conservative organizations see an opening that they are looking to exploit while it exists. I think that the public writ large does not want this type of programming and curriculum, but there's no question that these right-wing organizations see an opportunity and are striking while the iron's hot.
It's interesting too, because so much of the public school population, they're children of color getting these messages, and I'm looking down the road and seeing that the kind of education your child receives may depend upon where the child lives. So there won't be a common understanding of American history, American culture. Is that alarmist?
Not at all. I think that the goal of PragerU Kids is to do things as radical as redefine the history of the Civil War. One of the videos where the kids travel back and talk to Booker T. Washington, the fictionalized Booker T. Washington refers to the Civil War in the passive voice, and he says that hundreds of thousands of men gave their lives in a war that resulted in my freedom. Now, if that's what you learn about the Civil War, that enslaved people were sort of a passive non-factor in it, and that there's no distinction between the Union and the Confederacy, which is what this lesson teaches, you are getting a completely distorted version of U.S. history. And if you learn later on that, in fact, enslaved people were the primary drivers of their emancipation, and if you learn later on that the Union Army defeated the Confederacy, whose goal was to maintain chattel slavery at all costs, that's completely destabilizing, and it's impossible to understand the inheritances of slavery and Jim Crow and redlining and discrimination and all the rest of it without grappling with history and grapple with how the past continues to determine how the present manifests.
Thank you, John Knefel, for coming on What Next?
Thank you so much for having me.
John Knefel is a senior writer for Media Matters for America. That's the show. If you're a fan of What Next, the best way to support our work is to join Slate Plus. Go to slate.com/whatnextplus to sign up. What Next is produced by Elena Schwartz, Rob Gunther, Anna Phillips, Paige Osborne, and Madeline Ducharme. We're led by Alicia Montgomery with a little help from Susan Matthews. Ben Richmond is the Senior Director of Podcast Operations here at Slate. And I'm Mary C. Curtis, columnist at Roll Call and host of its Equal Time podcast. You can find me on Twitter at mcurtisnc3. Thanks for listening.